Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Happy Not Satisfied podcast. My name is Dan Morrison, and I am the founder of Happy Not Satisfied and host of this podcast. So today I am with an incredible human being. He is a serial entrepreneur, which is a term that I think is thrown around a lot, but in this case, I am certain is accurate. He's the founder of Magna Carta Wealth, the Evolutions app. He's the principal at the consulting firm, The Effect Global, and I know has done a lot more than that. Also, just side note, he's also a former Olympic level athlete. So very excited to have Stewart Gill on the podcast today. Stewart, how you doing?
I am amazing. Super happy to be here. I'm excited to talk to you, Dan. It's kind of been a long time coming, and it's an honor and a privilege, that's for sure.
I appreciate that, and I love that you said you're amazing. So we have that positivity vibe going. You just say, yeah, I'm pretty good. No, he's amazing. We love that. So before we jump into some of the kind of meat and potatoes of the podcast, you do so much, and I know you have like a lot of irons and a lot of different fires. So I'd love to hear what you're doing right now. I would imagine every day looks different, but maybe what an average day or week kind of looks like for you.
Yeah, you said the term serial entrepreneur, and I'm just recently embracing that. I actually was writing a bio not too long ago, and I started my first company when I was 17 years old. And so it's just kind of been rolling since then. And it stems from no other than just I like doing stuff. And then, just being active and moving forward and challenging myself. I think sometimes people just get, either they're afraid of failure, they get used to the day to day. For me, it's just always been like, I'm curious, let me go all in. And it turns out to be either I'm starting a company to figure it out, or I'm investing in a company, or I'm just kind of assisting on the side. To kind of fuel that passion, most recently what I'm doing is, as you said, I'm the principal of The Effect Global, and it's a twofold. It's a management consulting company as well as a kind of a life coaching company. Because I just kind of found, much like yourself, just when I'm around people, I end up just like talking and digging deep and asking a question after question, the real intuitive questions about who they are as a person, what life and what gets them lit up. And I have this passion of finding what somebody gets lit up about and then helping that dream come to reality. And that's what The Effect Global is. Really, we sit down with, entrepreneurs, future founders, or people who just want to live life a little bit differently. And we work with them to see what that goal is, and then we build a plan to achieve that goal.
Wow, that's really incredible. How long have you been doing that?
So it's kind of like, to be honest, it's kind of been just for life,
Yeah.
Like my mother would tell me, like, when I was a kid on the playground, if somebody fell, I would kind of sit down and pray over them and talk about how they can get back up on the monkey bars and so on and so forth. And as you said, you kind of mentioned I was an Olympic level athlete. I've been voted as like team captain for all the teams I've been a part of, which for me is a big honor because it's like your peers who are the best of the best say they choose you to kind of lead them. And it's from a steward leadership. It's not back in the day, I used to think I wanted to lead because I wanted to be out in front, but really now my version of leadership is being in the background, a tool for other success. So I've just more basically formalized it because I would answer these questions, or people always call me to take breakfast, lunches, meetings, and so on and so forth, and realize I was like, you know what? I could probably make some money out of this too. So
I think that's super interesting about your shift in your mindset towards leadership. Do you think that just kind of happened as you matured, or was there anything that in particular happened to change the way you looked at that?
I think it was just as I matured. I've always been one that's kind of exuberant and out there. I am 6'6". I am not the most unattractive man. I have a kind of a loud personality. And so I've always kind of, actually, to be honest, I've kind of tried to play small. Like when I walk into a room, I tend to kind of like curl my shoulders down to make me less intimidating. Or even in school, if there was a group project, I stood back and I didn't want to take the leadership because I thought give other people the moment to shine, but realized that just, you know what? I can shine, you can shine, we can all shine together. And it's just been a blessing, to be honest with you. And I really get joy out of helping others achieve, and then I achieve from there.
Yeah, and I think that that's really an interesting point, that you recognize you get joy out of helping other people. I think sometimes there's like this guilt associated with like, I feel good from helping somebody else. It should only be about helping them. But it's, it's a win-win if everyone feels fulfilled from that. I think that's great.
It's taken a long time to learn that not everything is black and white. I was like that, where if I do something good and I recognize it's good, and if I recognize it's good, does that mean I'm doing it for false intentions or or whatnot? But no, it's really like, I can help you out and I can get joy by helping you out, and also in turn maybe I help you out and it comes back later on. It helps me out later, 10 years from now. that's okay, and that's the way life works. You put positivity out there, positivity returns to you.
Yeah, absolutely. As silly as it sounds, it almost feels like when you give a Christmas gift, like it's okay to feel good about giving, like the reaction you get and like the joy someone feels from giving them that gift. I think that's a sort of a little tangible example of that. But you also, before we go on to the other stuff, aren't you also pretty involved in kind of talking about personal finance, and you've had some startups in that space too? Is that anything there that you could talk about?
Yeah, so I've always kind of been into health and wellness, and on the education side of health and wellness, because you can, as an athlete, I would have a coach tell me to, jump higher or push this weight, but I always performed better when I understood why I was doing the technique. So when he or she could relate the exercise to the outcome in the ring, it made sense to me. And so I kind of took that same kind of education approach to health and wellness in the fitness industry, because you don't go into the gym and a personal trainer just doesn't say lift. They actually have a plan, 8-week cycle. You want to lose weight. You want to run this marathon. And I took the same principles from fitness coaching to physical to financial fitness. You need to have the same sort of plan with your own personal wealth. And with the Evolutions app, as you mentioned, is our education platform for financial wellness. We did a lot of studies on people's relationship with money. And to be honest with you, it's all over the board. Some people are driven by it. Some people are scared of it. Some people feel like if you have it, you must be evil. If you don't have it, you're self-worthless, and so on and so forth. So we really digging deep about people's relationship with money. And it comes down to, listen, you don't need money to be a good, whole, perfect, complete person. But when you have that worry about not having to, where I'm going to pay the mortgage, or if I lose my job, I can't feed my family. When those worries are taken away because you have some wealth, you can actually live the life you want to.
I love that. So the Evolutions app is something that helps with that and kind of getting people focused, I guess, right?
Exactly. We start down with like your motivation, like what gets you up at night, right? So if it was just about buying a new car, when you have that first setback or that medical bill comes, you're going to just be like, oh, all is lost. But when you talk about, hey, I want to do generational wealth, I want to be able to pay for my kids' college, I want to be able to live the life where my wife or myself or my significant other, we don't have to work in a job to pay a paycheck. We can do something we love because we have money coming in, if we happen to make money, so on and so forth. Because life is going to have some setbacks, but when you have that thing that lights you up, you can go back, okay, this is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm sacrificing now. And so Evolutions app really helps you understand that, and then we build a team around you because you need some advisors. You need a CPA. There's a difference between filing your taxes or having a proactive tax plan. You need an investment manager. You need an insurance manager. You need, if you're going to buy your first home, some people go on Zillow.com and think they have to go with a realtor that's listed. No, you actually have a realtor that works with you and is actually a dog in a fight for you. So we help build your financial team around you. But what the one thing is different is this is your support team. You're telling them what to do versus them telling you, here's the moves to make. So you're kind of managing. You're the CEO of your own financial fitness company.
That's cool. It's been really interesting for me because I was a high school band director as a public school teacher, essentially, and now I'm in business school with, people that were not that. And so I've seen the extreme ends, I think, of how people view money, like you were talking about, from it's almost I feel guilty if I have it, or if you have it, you must have done something wrong to get it,
Exactly.
to, oh no, like this is capitalism, this is what makes our country great, like. And so it's really crazy how wide of a variety of viewpoints on money exist. And what I think I've realized is just I want enough money to live my life in the way that I feel happiest, whatever that looks like. I think I said this on a previous episode, but like that threshold doesn't have to be that high. If you have like freedom of time and how you're choosing to spend your day, I think that's true wealth. And it sounds like you're helping people find that through your venture. So that's really cool. But, I met with you, it was a while ago now, maybe even close to a year, but I remember thinking like, God, this guy, like he's got all these companies. He was like this amazing Olympic level athlete and all this stuff. Like, this is incredible. And obviously you're a very successful person, but like I told you, sort of the thread of all these episodes is talking to people like you who do all kinds of things, that might look on the outside as someone that's lucky. Oh, he just like hit it big on this company and, it just happened overnight. But I'm certain that's not the case. And so I would love to hear from you, like a story or a time or something in your life where you felt like you created your own luck.
Yeah. can we take a quick step back?
Please.
I think for me, I struggled for years with the concept of luck.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I heard the term luck, I heard not deserving, didn't work towards it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
When people used to introduce me as an athlete, and they would say, "Oh, you went to the Pan American Games. How lucky are you? Did you apply for the program?" I'm like, no, I actually trained for it. So I actually equate with luck to like just happenstance. I knew luck existed, but it was like it's something for other people, but not for me because I earned everything I got. But then realized there's kind of levels to luck.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast, and the first level to luck is just there's blind luck, right? If you're just walking down the street, you get hit by lightning, it's bad luck, and so on and so forth. If your friend gives you a bunch of lottery tickets, and you happen to win one, that's blind luck. It's just going to happen. You have no control over it. Which, okay, that's luck.
Yep.
And it does come into business sometimes too. But then the second kind of level is the concept of fortune favors the bold. So if you're in action, if you're in motion, luck is going to find you. Right? Nobody ever stumbles onto luck by just sitting down in a chair, right? So if I'm out in the street and I meet somebody and we have a connection, it's because I was actually out in the street networking. If I go to a networking event, if I go, I'm in that action, I'm in motion. And then that kind of, started me thinking, luck is something I can actually control or at least, present myself in a better light. And the last one is kind of like luck is kind of the favor of a prepared mind. So like if you're an investor, for example, you have 100 investments out there and they all fail, but there's a 101st one. You're like, you know what? I've seen this before because 10 years ago or whatnot, you're able to recognize opportunities, right? So one of my biggest fears in life was not being able to recognize opportunity when it presents itself. Now, I don't have to take them all, but the same thing, a prepared mind, because you have situations. As a band director, you've done this for 2 decades or so on and so forth. You've seen this motion. You've seen this problem present itself, or you've seen where, you can actually forecast, predict something's going to come down the line. You say, you know what? I'm going to make the adjustments. And that's the luck of a prepared mind because you've put yourself in that position. And the last one for me is just kind of the luck of circumstances, right? Like you have built up a certain amount of social equity. You and myself were connected from another third party and whatnot. And all of a sudden I'm thinking like, literally a couple weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I should probably start doing some podcasts. I don't know how to do this. And all of a sudden Dan reaches out to me and says, hey, I have this podcast. And the reason why is because you and I connected a while back ago. For whatever reason, I pulled a ruse on you and gave you some sort of like idea that I would be somebody you want to talk to. And I kind of put myself in position to be on this podcast. So I've gone from luck to being like, no, I've done everything myself. Luck doesn't exist to there's levels of luck and you can kind of make it happen. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, I think it's nuanced, right? Like you said earlier, not everything's black and white, and this concept isn't either. And obviously, there's the famous quote like "luck is when preparation meets opportunity." And so I really appreciate you putting thought into what that means. And to be honest, just for more context on why I started talking about this, I was on a phone call with somebody a few months ago, and we were just talking about. He was thinking about a career change or whatever, and was in a similar field, and he just said straight up to me, well, it was like, well, you've been really lucky. And I didn't really know what that meant or how to take that. It was like, I was a little bit offended, and that was, but it made me step back and it's like, well, yes, I am lucky. Like I have my health, I have my family, I now have this amazing baby. I can afford to pay rent. Like all of those things I feel very fortunate about. But I also don't think that's what he meant. I think it was more like, oh, you just, everything that you've gotten is just kind of handed to you or whatever. Maybe that's just my internal voice exaggerating what was happening. But,
right.
I think in terms of just like thinking about the word luck as some kind of a success you had in your life that you maybe didn't deserve or you didn't work for, when really that's not the case. I think it's important to talk about these things because when we look at other successful people, it is easy to think, oh, they were an overnight success because you didn't see the 15 years that happened before. You saw when they finally broke through, like you said, on the 101st investment. That's when you noticed them, not in the first 100. So, I would be curious from the context of all that, like if you feel that like that's ever happened to you or what that looked like.
Not to be too corny, but I really believe every day I wake up it's a blessing, right? It's like, wow, what a miracle, I have another day. And if I wake up thinking I'm sore, I'm achy, or I look at my calendar, I'm like, wait, no, I need to start the day with a positive attitude. No, I am here and the day can just, go on and get 100 times better. Most recently, we talk about creating my own luck is I have this kind of system where I have all my contacts I've ever gotten from like 17 years old, the first business on. Like It's gone from paper to now it's on a Google Sheet, and it's categorized. It's investors, it's operation leaders, it's motivational speakers, it's entrepreneurs, it's just athletes and whatnot. But I have this kind of list, and once a week I reach out to 10 people on that list. I just keep going down, and so on and so forth. And the reason being is because, one, I never want to be able to reach out to you, Dan. I haven't talked to you 5 years, and my first time, hey, Dan, I need this help here. And you're like,
Yeah.
I haven't heard from you in 5 years. It's like, okay, if I ever need to go back to the well, at least I'm staying current. And also, two, I'll reach out to Dan, and you can say, Dan, as a matter of fact, Stewart, I was just thinking about somebody. I need you in the exact same position. So I go through this list like diligently once a week. I go through 5 to 10 people, and it's either via email or text message, whatever the communication is, and I just go through it. And sometimes, because the list is getting longer, it's like a year and a half, 2 years before I reach out to you.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's a little bit shorter. But most recently, I reached out to a gentleman who's been kind of a mentor of mine in an international business and so on and so forth. We did some work with some opportunities in China. And I reached out to him. He's like, Stewart, this is amazing. I represent this company from Australia that's looking to come to the U.S., and I think you'd be the perfect person for this. He wasn't thinking about me, but the fact that I reached out to him was perfect timing. And lo and behold, 6 weeks later, they are now, the company he referenced me to is now my biggest client from a consulting standpoint. So, I have the system in place where I reach out to people and so on and so forth, but there's certainly luck to it, because I could have reached out to him 6 months ago. I could have reached out to him, 3 months in the future. But when I reached out to him, it was a perfect time, place, and I got a new client and also a renewed friendship.
That's the perfect story for this podcast. Like it's amazing. And I mean, you can say like, yeah, that there was luck to it, and maybe there was, but at the end of the day, because of your process, whether it was through this person and this opportunity or not, something was bound to happen just by sheer just doing it and sticking with it. It kind of reminds me a little bit. I talked to the CFO of this company, Biogen. It's a biotech company, and he said to get his first CFO job, he felt like kind of underqualified, but he drew out this schematic of what the job would entail with like all of this detail of every single facet of it. And he memorized the whole thing before he went into his interview. And he ended up getting the job because he was just so prepared, and it's like you're kind of being so prepared for an opportunity, and you're making those opportunities present themselves because you have a system. That's the thing. You have a system of how you approach it. It wasn't luck. It was like, no, I'm following my system. And I think for creative people too, this is really important, where it's like, well, I just have to wait for the creativity to strike me. I just need the inspiration to strike. And then you start to talk to really well-known screenwriters or painters or whoever. And they're like, no, I do this 10 hours a day, every day. Right. And then this one thing, the 0.0001% of what I did ended up being amazing. That's true. It's like the composer didn't just sit down and just, maybe Mozart did that supposedly, but it's even hard for me to believe that he did. He was just so prolific. He just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. And then a lot of it was really good. You keep contacting people and keeping them in your network, and eventually you get an amazing opportunity. So I think that's great.
Yeah, one of the things about that is I think I learned a long time ago from being an athlete, because I certainly won more than I lost, but I never equated failure to me being a failure. Right? I never said a loss means I'm a loser. And it just, either I failed to reach the goal that I planned, I failed in that day or that moment, but I am not a loser. I am not a failure. When I ventured out into the tech world recently in the past like 5 to 10 years, it kind of flipped the idea for me. Because before I was like, if I start my company, I have to make it a success and whatnot. But literally, my first tech company, I had a hard time getting funded. And the reason why is because investors said I had not failed enough. I'm like, no, my resume is impeccable. And so therefore, in which case you should invest in me. They're like, no, we need somebody that has tried, reached out there, failed, and got back up and then tried again, iteration, so on and so forth. So I'm like, that's a whole different mentality. I'm like, because in other aspects of life, if you, with your friends or family, if you start a company and you fail, like, oh, that's right, you weren't meant to do it. Like, no, I learned from the experience. And that kind of goes with luck, right? If you think about luck, you also have to, objectively recognize there's a thing called good luck and bad luck. You're lucky and you're unlucky. But either way, don't be defined by it. So you're not defined by your good fortune, and you're also not defined by your bad fortune, because really there's all life lessons from it. So
yeah, that's such a great point. And honestly, as you were saying that, I started thinking about times in my life where I thought I kind of got unlucky, And then thinking back, those are some of the best things that ever happened to me because of like how I responded or what happened next, or that wasn't actually the right opportunity. And so if you're able to kind of reframe things like that, it's super powerful. And that's interesting that you say that about like the venture capitalists or whoever who are saying that you haven't failed enough. It just it makes me think just quickly about like Adam Newman, who had the ultimate WeWork disaster, like had a show made off of him, and now he just raised another $350 million.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he proved that he failed. It's something to it.
Go ahead and be unlucky again. $300 million in the bank.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, I don't wake up like Pollyanna. I don't dream in cartoons. Not everything is super positive, but my approach to it, right? It's because I'm 44 years old. I've made it this far. There's been ups and downs. Sure, hindsight, I would never, maybe with that learning, I would do something different. I go left instead of right. But at the same point in time, I've been kicked down. I know that I can probably get back up again and live another day tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so whatever happens to me today, it doesn't define me, good or bad. Good social media, bad social media, got invested, didn't get invested in or whatnot. I started a company, it wasn't a success. It's just great. There's a learning here. Let's do it again. Bootstrap it up and let's go.
100%. There's two things from that I want to follow up with you on. My first question is, were you always sort of this positive mindset type of person, or did that develop over time, or is it just something that you feel like was innately in you?
Probably a mixture of both. I not to get too deep in the doldrums, but I grew up in a relatively tough childhood. A father that struggled with addiction, and we kind of went not in poverty, but money was definitely something we didn't talk about in the family. We knew we didn't have a lot of it, but we didn't talk about it. Probably made some financial mistakes, so on and so forth, which kind of led me down this path of financial fitness. But as a kid, you don't recognize anything different. Like you're just playing and having fun. You see that you're not in the best situation or not in a situation that others could be in a little bit different. And I just kind of said, hey, I'm just going to try to live life like a kid. And to my detriment, sometimes I didn't have as much success as possible. Even as an athlete, I would have coaches say, you need to be 100% focused on sport. And, when I was a kid, I never went to my high school prom. I'm like, well, that's stupid. You should go to your prom. Like, you should not focus on school. You should focus on being an athlete. And I always want to be well-rounded. So, I competed as well as went to school, playing for a different day. So for me, it was always important just to have my, toes in, a lot of different activities going on, recognizing that I truly believe in myself. Like I am confident. I'm confident if I decide, Dan, I want to be the oldest astronaut in history, I could be an astronaut by 50 years old if I really wanted to, which means I'd have to sacrifice my entire life. I'd have to only eat quinoa and celery sticks. I'd have to work out every day. I have to go back to school and get a aeronautical engineering degree in bioscience and so on and so forth. If I really wanted to do this, I probably could, but the chances I want to be an astronaut, but I also kind of want to look good. So I want to jog, or, I also want to be an astronaut. I want to look good, but I also want to travel a little bit. So I recognize that I can't do one thing 100%. If I did something 100%, I would be success at it. But maybe 95%, 90% is good enough. And I learned a long time ago, I get joy out of being well-rounded. I get joy out of being able to have a conversation with a plethora of people and not just that 1% in the world. And for me, that's what success is. And success is just being able to connect, be empathetic, have conversations, and support others. And whether that's luck or whether that's just good fortune or a positive attitude, it's just who I am. And I've never met a stranger. It's just you're somebody I haven't met yet and had a conversation with. So let's just go. Yeah. Talk.
Have you ever read the book called Range? The author is escaping me right now, but it's right in line with what you're talking about. It's like the advantage of being a generalist in a specialized world. And it talks a lot about just how being interested in a lot of things and pursuing a lot of different avenues is really beneficial. And it even starts out talking about like young kids who get funneled into very specific activities with blinders on, and how that actually ends up being detrimental to them later in life. It's a super interesting book. If you haven't read it, I just can't remember the author right now, but it's David Epstein. I have the book right there.
There you go. Okay. Plug.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This segment is brought to you by.
Yeah, right. That was totally. Yeah, that's my first podcast sponsor. No, I wish. But anyway, yeah, I think that's interesting. And I grew up in a very specialized field of playing the trumpet, playing classical trumpet, and like to the point where I thought I was going to do that as my career. And that's as specialized as you can get. And it taught me a lot, and I don't regret it. And I'm glad that I went through the process of doing that. But I'm also glad that I have fallen out of the process of doing that, because it's like once I stopped pursuing it I kind of had an injury and a variety of weird things happen, but I'm super grateful for that, because I don't think I was able to live my fullest self doing one thing so hardcore. And not to say that there's not something to be said for that. And I think people are better than others at doing something specialized while still finding other outlets. But that for me was really hard. I think it kind of weighed me down as a person to be so, like you were talking about your coaches. It's like, don't go to your prom, don't do this, don't do that. Like all you should care about is this one thing. And that's kind of how I felt for the first 22 years of my life. And it's been really interesting, because I don't really even pull my trumpets out very much anymore, to be honest, which is kind of sad. But it's interesting to think back how different my life was when that was all I did, like eat, sleep, breathe, classical trumpet.
I'm curious. So this happens a lot with athletes and so on and so forth. You know, you being a trumpet player, very creative, a musician. Did that become your identity? And when people like recognize you as the trumpet player, and then did that also, because that became your identity, did that also make it more difficult to step away because that's how people knew you and you saw yourself as?
It was definitely my identity, 100%. Like I knew a lot of people in a lot of different contexts, I feel like, but all of them knew that I was like the music guy, the trumpet player, you know? And it was, I couldn't go to the social functions because I had to practice, or I would bring my trumpets with me on vacation, family vacation. We'd have to go find a ballroom where I could go practice. And then if it didn't go well, it was like, well, then I just had a bad day the rest of the day, because I was upset about how it didn't go well. Just like an athlete, you know, maybe if they didn't train well or they had a bad match or whatever, that really, like you said, when it's your identity and something goes wrong with that one thing, then your whole being is kind of sucked out of you. And I felt that a lot. And this, I feel like I love classical music. I'm still involved with, like, you know, marching band and all that stuff. I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing. I just had a very intense relationship with it. And it definitely was my identity. And actually, funny enough, I think that made it almost easier to step away. It made me excited to step away, because I knew that there had to be something else that I could experience. And so for some people, I can see it being difficult, like you're kind of bonded to it in a way that's hard to let go. But for me, and I've always sort of been that way, like, oh, I graduated high school, like, okay, bye, next thing. You know, I'm not like a nostalgic person to hold on to the thing that I'm doing or the previous thing. So that might be part of it too. But yeah, it's interesting, because it defined me 100%. And now I feel like it doesn't really at all.
It's good. It's a part of who you are. It's a part of your experience. It's not who you are today. It defines who you are. Athletes really struggle with this, because as a junior level athlete, you're training to become an athlete, and then, or go pro, and you become pro. So you actually live the life of being a pro, and then you retire, mostly not due to your own fruition, because people say you can't play, you're going to get hurt. You're an ex-pro. That's who you are. So your entire life, you've either trained to be an athlete, you were an athlete, or an ex-athlete.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more life to live, and so many other aspects to it. You could be a father, you can be an entrepreneur, you can just be a good person, you could be active in your community, a philanthropist, or you could just be somebody. I think you can just be somebody that's just happy.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's definition of success is different. I think if I win and you win doesn't mean the world can't win. You know, my definition of winning today can change tomorrow, and also my definition of winning today doesn't also have to hinder your definition of winning and success. So I think there's room in this world for us to just, you know, find out who we are and be that. One of the challenges with the Effect Global is that we get lit up about this dream, and people want to create this life for themselves, and we build this plan to create this life for themselves financially, fiscally, whatever it looks like. And then they say, now what? Well, now you get to live the life.
Right.
And then you know what? If you don't want to live that life anymore, you can create something new. You know, it's the old adage of open space. I think oftentimes people see open space and they get scared of the unknown. You know, even though today I know I'm a little bit miserable, I know I'm a little bit unhappy, I know I'm a little bit unsatisfied, but I also know I can get through it. and tomorrow I can get through it again tomorrow. Whereas the unknown, it's scary. What's out there versus looking at it as like, hey, the unknown, I can create this opportunity and just blue ocean and just be who I want to be. And you know what? If I fail, I can always go back to my old way of being because I've done it for 44 years of being stagnant.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think the idea of being happy has come up several times. Obviously, this whole thing is the happy, not satisfied concept, which is kind of this idea to me of like going to sleep proud of what you did that day while looking forward to what you get to do the next day. And some of the concepts that I like to talk about around that, you've already mentioned a lot, is like this idea of I'll be happy once where it's once I do this thing, then I'll finally allow myself to feel happy, which I think you've talked about, especially with athletes and stuff. And then also the idea, and I think this is big with you, is like achievements are byproducts of the process. And so you live your life, you do your thing, you're not focusing on any specific outcome necessarily, but outcomes that you like end up happening if you lean into what you're doing every day. So I would be, I guess, just interested to hear if you feel any of that in your life, if you've, especially like the whole I'll be happy once because that was a huge thing that I still struggle with. If you ever feel that or catch yourself doing that, or maybe you used to be that way and you're better about it, anything with that.
Well, all the time, each and every day, right? I live life intentionally, and I think, the moment I get excited about something, the very next instant self-doubt creeps in. I'm an imposter. I can't do it. It's going to be hard. But no, I'm like, hey, thank you, voice, on my shoulder. Appreciate that. I'm not going to listen to you today. I truly get excited about the process. I like the process of solving problems and moving forward and having a step back, move 3 steps forward. But that doesn't mean sometimes when I get kicked down, I don't wallow, in self-pity for a little bit. You have to feel. But at the same point in time, I also know that I'm going to get up tomorrow and attack it again, from a new way, a new perspective. I think the beauty of life itself is that it's unpredictable, that there's stuff out of your control. You can't control how life happens to you, but you can control your response to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just the way it is. And that's good, bad, the ugly, and all the stuff in between. If we didn't know sad, we couldn't recognize happiness. If we never experienced failure, how can we appreciate achieving and winning? And so from that mentality, that's why the process is so great, because I always have a plan that I want to go out, this goal set that I want to take, and I work the plan backwards. But I also know it's not going to be a straight line. There's going to be things I didn't know about. It's going to take more money, it's going to take more time. There's going to be a setback. There's going to be a global pandemic. There's going to be all these things. Or you know what? I just might get tired and I want to go pivot. And sometimes it's good ways, because it's like, hey, while I was building this plan to get here, I recognize there's a new opportunity that lit me up even more. So life is not a straight line. It's it's messy, but that's what makes life beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. So many great takeaways from what you just said, and I agree 100% with all of it. So I mean, I tying back to what your luck story actually is kind of an example of achievements being byproducts of the process, because you had a process, you had a spreadsheet, you reached out to your people, and then lo and behold, you had a quote unquote achievement, where you got this huge client, and that wasn't like, I am seeking a huge client, here's what I'm going to do. It was,
right,
no, I'm going to do these things because something sometime is going to come of it. And it did. And I think that's a hard lesson to learn and honestly to believe. Like, I think a lot of these concepts come back to like trusting that if you do the right things every day, the outcomes will happen that make you happy. But it's, I mean, I have clear memories of like driving home from work and being, thinking like, I know I want to do something else, but I don't know what, and how do I figure it out? And I just like, this feels so big and so ambiguous, and what is it? And then when you kind of back away a little bit and just start working at things and talking to people and making connections and doing all that, then stuff just pops up, but it's hard to trust that that's going to happen. Somehow we have this thing in us that's like, well, no, we have to hold on to this stress. We have to hold on to this big idea that's stressing us out. Otherwise it's not going to happen. When really that's just doing the opposite of what you want. So one last thing, and before we hop off here, this has been a great conversation, but I think all this too, kind of what I was just saying, sort of relates to this idea of, and I'll explain more what this means, is like your stress isn't keeping the plane in the air, which is like I know someone that was afraid of flying, and they felt like stressing about the airplane was somehow making it not crash, even though it was completely irrational. But I started to realize, like, at first, I was like, oh, that's silly. And then I was like, wait, no, I actually feel that way about a lot of things in my life. Like with the band, it was like, if I'm not stressing about this kid and this parent and this thing and what's going to happen tomorrow and all this, then somehow the band is going to be bad the next day. Whereas really, if I'm stressing, then probably I'm not being the best leader or the best version of myself. And that's actually causing things to get worse. So, I mean, I don't know if you have any experience in all of your vast like leadership and entrepreneurial endeavors where you found yourself like always stressing and realizing that it was not a fruitful endeavor to do that.
Yeah, there's good and bad stress, right? So stress under time and tension, that's how we break down muscles, we get stronger and whatnot. But, I think an analogy like you said in terms of the band, as an athlete, the night before a major competition, Olympic trials or whatnot, is the night I slept the best. Where most people would be up nervous and running around and so on and so forth. But I realized, listen, I've done all the training I can do up to this point. Doing more push-ups or watching more tape at midnight is not going to make me a better fighter tomorrow. I've literally done all I could done. Now, if it was 3 months ago, I could change my program and my plan. But no, at this point, it's like I've literally done everything I can do to lead up to this moment. Now my job is to go to bed, wake up, and shine and let it all come out. And so that's when I realized, like, stress, there's very few things in life that require immediate response. The house is on fire, I should run. Fear. Somebody's pointing a gun at me, I should be fearful. But other than that, you know what? I don't fear things. Fear is a made-up word, just like blueberries. Being scared is a made-up word, just like blueberries. Might as well say I'm scared of starting. I'm blueberry of starting. Same thing. Stress. I don't need to react to everything right now, so I can take a second, breathe, and relax. And I always think about the outcome, the decision I make. Is this life-changing? If it's gonna, paint the picture of my next 10 years, I probably should take some more time to make the decision. If it's not, if it's like, am I gonna eat, Mexican or Chinese food tonight? I make the decision right away. So I don't stress out about things unless it requires attention. And even if it's something I should stress out about, it just means I have more focused intent on it, and I bring people in to gather more information so I can make the best decision. But the key is, once you make the decision, you need to move forward, and never second guess it, because you made the decision based on all the information knowledge you had at that moment in time, and you just gotta go 100% forward in that direction until the next decision time is here.
Yeah, and I think saying not necessarily that it's stress, but it's focused intent. It's an interesting way of reframing it. I think that's appropriate. Well, cool. I mean, it's been an amazing conversation, and I feel like we're very aligned on a lot of things. So it's fun to talk to somebody of like mind. I'm sure there are a variety of places that people can find you, but is there anywhere in particular that you'd like to tell folks about?
Well, probably the best way is I'm trying to up my social media. So you can find me on the gram.
Perfect.
At it's Stewart _E_Gill on Instagram, and on there's links to everything I'm doing in terms of whether it's the philanthropic charity work, whether it's the Effect Global or Evolutions App, and so on and so forth. So just find me on social media.
It's a good Instagram. I followed recently. He's got some good videos on there. He talks about all kinds of stuff. So highly recommend. And if you want to learn more about Happy Not Satisfied, you can check out our website, happynotsatisfied.com. Also on Instagram, happy.notsatisfied. But this has been an inspiring conversation, and hopefully we can get together in less than a year next time around. But Stewart, thank you so much. I will talk to you soon.
Appreciate you.